Hey guys, Vlad Dobryansky here, and today I'm going to discuss the situation around Ukraine and specifically aid to Ukraine. So I see a lot in the news and internet. There's a campaign obviously going on now for the presidential elections coming soon in 2 years, and in 1 year now, and I hear some claims that are actually not true, and I'm going to tell you what are they. For example, I saw Donald Trump having a rally somewhere stating that why America is giving the largest donor to Ukraine, what is the accountability, why do we have to do this? If he was the president, he would go to Putin, tell him something, and he would go to Zelensky, tell him something, and it will be over in 24 hours. It would be nice, but here's the reality. Number one, aid to Ukraine. So Russia is spending $1 billion a day on war in Ukraine. $1 billion a day. They were earning that money just from Germany alone, from oil and gas, selling oil and gas a month. Okay, so now Ukraine lost about $1 trillion in its infrastructure. So in order to rebuild Ukraine where it was before the war, we're not talking about going further, before the war, that's $1 trillion. 15 million refugees. And not to mention the atrocities and kill people. Somebody has to be responsible for all of that. So anyways, so what kind of negotiation would be telling Putin what? That I have a bigger button? Putin is not scared. If you tell Zelensky, oh, just give those territories away, well, it's not about Zelensky, it's people, Ukraine, who will say, you know what, go away. Okay? And who's gonna pay? Who's gonna be responsible? Who's gonna be in court and taking responsibilities about the atrocities that they did in Ukraine? So it's about Judgment Day. So the aid itself, America gave so far officially $50 billion in aid. That is not cash, right? It's an American bank where Ukrainian government has access to it, and they can access the money to buy the military equipment. The ones they want apparently is not possible, so they buy anything possible, as well as humanitarian aid. Now, 35 or 38 billion dollars was given by EU from Brussels. UK alone gave about 10 billion, and other countries such as Estonia, Latvia, Poland, and you name it. A lot of countries gave to Ukraine and keep giving, and it's about $100 billion. Just to compare. America, United States, during the World War II in 1943, gave to Soviet Union alone $140 billion today's money. Okay, just measure that. Now, if you look at that measurement, as $50 billion America gave to Ukraine, and $10 billion UK, EU altogether gave 38 or 35 billion, I'm sorry. Then the amount of money, yes, it's bigger, but let's see a different measure, GDP. If you look at the GDP, basically how much the country makes and how much would be a distribution among everybody who lives in there. Estonia gave 1.1%. Estonia, a tiny country, 1.1% of its value, right, a year. Latvia, 0.8. Poland, 0.5. America, the US, gave 0.2. So if you look at the ranking, America gave the 10th in donors. Number one is Estonia. Okay, so when I hear these kind of things from rallies such as Trump, for example, saying, hey, America's giving the most, it's not true. It could, but it didn't. It's not the leader in that. Okay, and I guarantee you, you don't even feel it in your pocket, because the money that's in the US government, they usually go to military. And what military is important right now? To make sure the peace in the world. So where is that happening? In Ukraine. Okay, so that's a myth. It's populism. As well as the other thing. For example, in 1994, the Budapest Agreement, United States, UK, Russia, and then later China signed a memorandum saying that Ukraine's sovereignty is going to be protected by those countries if anybody is trying to get Ukraine. Why would anybody want to get Ukraine? Because of soil, fertile soil. It was breadbasket of Soviet Union, now it's a breadbasket from Morocco all the way to Nepal. It's the largest exporter of sunflower oil, the fourth largest exporter of corn, wheat, and so on and so forth. So obviously it's a yummy piece of pie. And Russia tried to get Ukraine all the time, since its inception in 16th century. And one thing in 1994 would happen. Ukraine was the third largest nuclear power in the world, after America, Russia, then Ukraine. What happened in Budapest Agreement? That Ukraine agreed to give up its nuclear arsenal, and listen to that, to Russia, give it to Russia, dismantle its military completely. For example, in 2002, 30 military planes, MiG, were disassembled, paid by the United States, and moved to Russia. So Ukraine lost its military, Ukraine lost its nuclear potential, basically stripped down to zero by 2002 with the Budapest Agreement. Guess who was in power in 2002 in Russia? Putin. So of course, for Putin, having Ukraine stripped of anything was not worried about it. In 2014, and in 2004, that's how it started, Ukraine tried to get things together, because the scientific community is very strong in Ukraine. There's a lot of education, high education in Ukraine. And of course, they wanted to be back where they were. So Russia tried to corrupt Ukrainian officials, to put their puppet leaders, give them tons of money. They were buying London, islands. They were the richest guys in the world, not declaring any income. Putin himself is probably a trillionaire. Without the family and a wife, good example, is it? And he's telling the world how to live. So Ukraine, being independent, being always independent in its heart and mind, wanted to have free enterprise. So that's what happened in 2004. That's what happened in 2008. In 2014, the revolution that ousted the pro-Russian leader that was paid by Putin. And of course, Ukraine started to grow. Of course. The export of grain started to grow. They started to build its military. They started to build its science back to normal, to the civilized Ukraine that I know. And that is the country that I love. And if you talk about the natural resources, Ukraine was the supply of oil and gas to Russia before 1970. Russian KGB shut it down, completely shut down the production of oil and gas in Ukraine. And of course, now we want to revamp that. Zelensky said so. That's a threat to Russia. It's a threat that Ukraine, where Russia came from, Ukraine becomes solid, economically wealthy, scientific, has its own military and its own resources. It is a big threat, because that means Ukraine can cut off the bridge between Europe and Russia, including the Black Sea. That's why Russia invaded Ukraine. That's why Russia doesn't want any Ukrainian, independent Ukrainian in its mind and heart, to be there. The genocide, as they did it with Stalin, as they did it with Catherine the Great, it continues. The imperialistic idea of Russia that was incepted by Kiev and then developed by Mongol Tartars. And that's the idea of Russia. Now, if you think that this is a local problem, again, you're mistaken. I just named a couple of interesting things. Russia is the second largest nuclear power Ukraine is probably the biggest food supply in the world with tons of resources. Do you think it's not important? Not to mention the genocide that's going on and the impact on every country in Europe and in the world that Russia trying to impose. So all of these myths that I hear now and populism have to be looked in the prism of history, in the prism of science, and prism of facts. And the history of Russia is nothing else but imperialistic. It was never about Russia. It's about new territories, getting the grain. Stalin made sure there was a famine in Ukraine in 1932, 1933, killing 7 to 15 million people in Ukraine, starving to death, in order to get the crops out of Ukraine, sell it, in order to have money to develop economy for Russia, for Soviet Union. So that's my take on it. And I think no Ukrainian in the world will agree to any negotiation unless Russia is punished, unless those who did atrocities, who raped children, women, who killed people in Ukraine, are being responsible and be standing in tribunal. And I'm not talking about going back, I'm talking about going forward. So I believe that America can do more. I'm an American citizen. And it is an American thing to do not to let the genocide such as going on right now close their eyes and say, hey, we'll just negotiate. No. We have to punish it, we have to stop it and punish it. Those who are responsible. Thank you guys for your attention to what I say. If you can help refugees, here's a link. Please do help. We are helping every day. This is not about a musical message from me. It's about something that is humanity and in me, and being humanitarian is the key here. Okay? And I'll tell you about the history of Ukraine and Russia in different posts. Thanks.